my LinkedIn, I call myself a troublemaker at various parts of the social capital market. The market between the traditional capital markets and philanthropy. We're in this market at the intersection of money and meaning. So, I became somebody who builds information businesses inside emerging markets, and I've been doing this one inside where the capital market is trying to learn to do good for a decade or so.
Tell me more about this. So about the intersection of money and meaning.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's we're breaking an old myth in the U.S. anyway. And I can speak to our myths and demons. The capital market folks, the first robber barons, Andrew Carnegie, Rockefeller, those kinds of folks. They believed that the market was a force of nature, a social Darwinist thing, red in tooth and claw, that just leave us alone, this is the wealth creation engine, look, you're getting railroads, back off. And they were concerned that the progressives were going to attack the market as a force of doing harm and holding the market accountable. And they said, don't hold the market accountable, we'll set up this nonprofit system where you can have foundations and leave the market alone, and you can help us distribute the excess. And we also have one pocket where we put in all the money, and all we think about is getting all the money, put it in the pocket. And we have another small pocket where we do some good to sometimes mitigate the bad things we do in the market. Mm-hmm. And they bought it. And so that keeps foundations weak. Foundations in the U.S. Are just asset management vehicles with small philanthropic arms. We have a for-profit company that we've invested in, Better World Books, and they give 8.5% gross margin to literacy groups out of every sale. So they're about 150% more effective, a philanthropic vehicle, than a foundation is that gives 5%. Mm-hmm. So I think, and then they keep the do-gooders weak, and then they have foundations believe that they should last forever, so they grow the corpus, the 95% of a foundation's dollars. 95% is really captive to the capital market, and the goal is to make it bigger and bigger. And so they want to invest it without regard to consequences. So they grow the 5% to give out. So they're looking, it's like they're riding a horse and they're only focusing on the stuff coming out the back end rather than how you feed the horse. Mm-hmm. In no other enterprise would you only put 5% of what you're about toward your goal. So but the robber barons love it because that makes the money that the foundations are based on captive to them. Right. So we're changing that myth.
So with this in mind, you founded Good Capital?
Yeah, so Good Capital was one of the first of these funds. We were called social venture funds then, and now we're called impact funds. So that's okay. One of the robber baron descendants, the Rockefeller Foundation, got everybody to use that word, and so it's a good thing. At least we have a common word. And but then it was too hard for any investor to pay attention to us. The due diligence on us, because we were so different, was so hard. They just said, I can't. We had several that said, 2 different billionaires say, I can't think like this. Please leave the room, because we were hurting their heads. They said, I think about money, I think about giving. If you put them in the same place, I can't think like that. They were just running into some expressible cultural barrier where we were physically causing them pain to think in this new way.
Why? What exactly are you moving and disrupting?
Well, we were breaking that myth of capital is about money and giving is about good, and we were bringing them together. So we did SOCAP as a way to say, look, you can't look at us, you can look at all of us together. It's a look at the spectrum. And so that we wanted to show them it's real, it's big, it's growing, but there's a spectrum. And so then you can do due diligence on a spectrum. There's enough of you for me to pay attention to you. Kind of like collective intelligence meets Whoville. Mm-hmm. The Horton hears the Who. They had to be heard. It took all of us to be heard. And so we validated the market, which is a traditional tactic. I've done businesses that validated markets before. And you gather everybody together, the investors and the entrepreneurs, and then you make the investors smart. And that's what we've been trying to do.
What is SOCAP?
SOCAP is the place where all these impact funds come and all the for-profit social entrepreneurs. It's the biggest conference in the world in this space. It's about 1,700 people from 70 countries last year. And people come to learn and partner and change the way they think and take action and pretty much that kind of thing.
What do you think of the quote, all entrepreneurs are social because they make the world a better place? Do you agree?
Well, no, I think some entrepreneurs make the world worse. Back in my previous career, I built a decision support system for polluters so they could figure out which laws to break, and what the cost-benefit analysis was on this law cost this much to break. I mean, I wasn't doing good. It was the highest margin information business in that particular area. They loved it. But they're not all social. You know, business does bad things sometimes. Of course they do, you know.
Where do you draw the line nowadays, especially in the Silicon
I'm
Valley?
not into drawing lines much because then you get into ditches where you fight other fundamentalists, and it's like, you know, it's like World War I. You know, it's not a pleasant scene to draw lines.
What I figured out here in the Silicon Valley, we're all talking about changing the world. Who is really changing the world?
Yeah, there's lots of reasons to be skeptical and to say you're not it, you're not it. You know, the more you say you're not it, then we're smaller. You know, I try to find the connections. You know, some are more pure. I mean, for my business, for my fund, my next fund, our first fund is doing well, and we're about to exit, and so I look for things where there's mission insurance. You know, where the mission will survive the exit of the visionary founder who believes. You know.
How is it different for an investor to invest in a social project?
Well, you want to make sure you're doing good, but you don't want to burden the entrepreneur with, you know, all the reporting that you need. So you have to make sure your reporting and your metrics do no harm and don't get in the way. But that's the thing, you want to make sure you do good. And then you have to decide, you know, it's not necessarily market rate or not market rate. You don't necessarily make more money or less money doing this stuff. Sometimes there's a cost of doing good. And that's when you're going after a market of customers that, you know, they don't have much money and somebody needs to subsidize them. Like that workforce development example at Juma Ventures, you know, there's a subsidy inside that business to pay for the training, and there's lives changed because of it. Sometimes it's there, and so you're subsidizing some of it, so you'll make less profit. There's a subsidy. Subsidies are fine. You can decide to do subsidies.
So do you think the social and profit combination could replace the non-profit world?
Well, you know, nonprofits exist to deal with the excesses and problems created by the for-profit world. So, I mean, if there's a massive relocation of how we do things, you know, maybe they wouldn't be needed. But the market doesn't solve everything. You know, I worked on malaria for 2 years in sub-Saharan Africa, and, you know, the market is not a solution there. Those are the poorest people who have the least power, and nobody really wants to subsidize them. You know, we don't wear any malaria bracelets, unlike we wear AIDS bracelets. So that's really helped AIDS in Africa, that we have an identification with those folks. The affluent folks can buy the drugs or have the nets, and they either deal with malaria or don't get it. Poor folks don't. And so we don't feel that, and so those deaths aren't disruptive. So the market doesn't solve everything. The market will never solve everything. The market solves some things, you know, but the market should serve the commons. The market, you know, it should be a tool and not, you know, think that it's in charge. We should rein in the market and make it the tool to build the world we want.
Right. And what are you doing at the hub to make a difference? And how is it different from other co-working spaces?
Yes, they're different because this is where change goes to work. You can't really it's not just for every startup. You have to be part of this movement in some way, or want to be part of it, or be a career person in a business, but you want to be around these kind of entrepreneurs who are trying to use the market to change the world.
How do you select them?
It's self-selected. There's an interview process, but you know, a lot of people don't know why they're coming here, but they feel drawn to it. And so, you know, we want to do that kind of thing. But I think we're starting to figure it out. We have 1,400 members here, and there's, you know, about 5,000 worldwide. We're the biggest here in San Francisco and also in Berkeley. And we're networking with other folks who are not in our network. CSI from Toronto, it's Center for Social Innovation. They were also moving to New York, so we're partnering with them. They're a nonprofit from Canada. They and Sandbox, which is kind of a pop-up social innovation thing, we're doing a series of hangouts where we're just learning from each other, because we're all figuring out some parts of the model. And the Google Hangouts are just saying, you know, bring us something that you have that's working. Talk 15 to 20 minutes, and we're going to do it every month. So I think they're different by intention. One other thing is that people work more closely here than they do in typical co-working, because they want to work together. They collaborate more just instinctively, and they want to figure out, you know, they're all solving some part of the same big problem. Well, that means higher density. That means more revenue per square foot. So it's one place where the mission increases the margin.
Would you define these startups all social startups?
They're mostly, yeah. I mean, social is, you know, they are most of the startups here are here to solve a social or environmental problem. I can't think of any that isn't, I guess. So yeah, I guess I would say that. But I'm not about definitions and rigor about who's out, because some people are on their way in, and so you want to be welcome the ones who are on their way in, who are trying to figure out how do I get in, and because you don't want to be this exclusive club. Well, you're not using the right word.
Right.
You're not really true enough. Sorry,
Right.
So you have to be welcoming to people who are on a path.
Right. And one last question for you: if there's something you could change in the whole world, what would it be?
Well, I'm with one of my mentors is a woman who won the Nobel Prize for Economics a couple of years ago named Elinor Ostrom. And she is the one who figured out that commons is not really a tragedy, that we really can work together on big problems like, cleaning our watersheds together and stuff like that. And she had a lot of principles about how and where that works. And she just said, it's something that I go, when somebody asks me a big problem, like how would I change the world? Well, the solution to a global problem is a polycentric solution. So it means that polycentric means like wherever you are is the center, and what leverage do you have? So you don't change the world, but what around you can you change? What's part of the world you want to create? Well, that's you can get stuck trying to change the world. You don't get stuck trying to do the things you can do. So I try to focus on the things that I can do, and then one of the things I can do is create a platform where these people do stuff. So I work with a lot of younger entrepreneurs and try to figure out how I can help them build the world that my grandsons need.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Liz. This is great.